So I said we'd get to it, and I'm a man of my word. Brexit, why we won. We're looking back at those glorious gammony heydays of the early 2016 hang on, I must remember that this is the revised version. When was it? Was it August? Yeah. This was originally, according to this, of 30th of June. However, I think this one, the version I have, was the one released a bit later in August. So it's around that sort of time period. So we'll go through the introduction, shall we? On June the 23rd, the British people comprising England, Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Gibraltar and London, London's part of England, but never mind, went to the ballot box to vote on a question: should we leave or remain in the EU? Which in itself is a pretty botched question. And like we've said, and will no doubt come up again, what exactly were people voting to leave? There are a lot of people who voted leave but are really upset that they're now being said that they wanted a WTO Brexit. That's not what they wanted. They wanted to remain in the single market and customs union, or they just wanted to remain in the customs union. And they're annoyed that their will is not being carried out. So will of the people be damned to all of these hard Brexiteers. On the night, even on the night, I separated London out. It is an entity of 8 million people in its own right. More importantly, it is where the liberals, the intelligentsia, and the politicians and the money lives in a different world. I really need to develop a voice for this guy. I really do. It's not a different world, though. It just happens to be the capital city. And the intelligentsia and liberals. So apparently they live nowhere else in the UK. As I'm sure everyone knows, the Leave won. And it is actually said the Leave won. The Leave won by an overall margin of 52 to 84% with a turnout of 72%. It was a clear victory. No, it wasn't. It was actually the 2% in it. That was a very close thing, and by no means can you say it was a clear victory at all. And anyone who insists that somehow it is a clear victory, if this vote you are saying is a clear victory, if this had happened in a parliamentary vote, it would be a hung parliament. If this had happened in, say, a European country, the party with the most votes would now be trying to secure their victory by negotiating with other parties. Anyway, back to it. Regardless of what Remain since tried to claim to invalidate the vote, of which more anon. Oh, you're going to be so fun by this guy and his bizarre wording sometimes. As I write this in early July of 2016, it is not clear that our politicians solely in the Remainer camp will either implement the vote by invoking Article 50 and negotiating a sensible settlement on our behalf. So, clearly this guy supports Theresa May's deal. Actually, he doesn't. I'm going to have to look at this guy on Twitter, but I do not think this guy would support Theresa May's deal. Because remember, arguably, Theresa May's deal does deliver on the Brexit vote. Remember, leave was so ill-defined as a concept and as to where the hell we would end up that Theresa May's deal, as bad as it is, does actually fulfil the requirements of the referendum. As negotiate a sensible settlement on our behalf, or whether they will find some excuse to ignore the vote, even rerun it as governments in Europe have done until they get the right result. As of August 21st of 2016, it is astonishing. May is going to respect the vote, given the uproar. Given the uproar from Remain and their continuing manoeuvring that was by no means certain. We'll see. So the resistance won. The collaborations from the new government. The collaborators formed the new government. And yet they're now being apparently loyal to a new independent Britain. Our dependency on politicians to oversee the outcome from the vote has been one of the more disturbing aspects of the aftermath of the vote. So, apparently, remember, now Brexiteers are saying that politicians are not honouring the vote. Nigel Farage himself saying that this is a betrayal, and yet in this book, written literally 3 or 4 months after the referendum, is saying that politicians are carrying out the actions of the vote. Oh, how times have changed. Once it became clear just how strongly the establishment was determined to remain, ultimately, this was indeed a victory of the people over politicians, foreign and domestic, the liberal world institutions and business interests, including major US corporations. Some of the biggest supporters of the Leave vote were major corporations. But oh well, never mind. I was less than impressed with the latter seeking to interfere in the politics of a foreign nation, but from the home of the new CIA. Would you be surprised? As to our victory, Remain derogatory as ever, have characterised that as being old white thickos making the wrong decision. And oh boy, will we see what happens in that wrong decision. Again, all the experts are saying one thing and none of it's good. Well, I am 2 of those, but as a member of Mensa... Okay, so this guy's a member of Mensa. It's been so long since I've written this. I'm not sure I can fairly be characterised as a thicko. And as to wrong, given the news in the media in Europe and the absence of the sky falling on our heads, it seems more sound every day. Oh, it's so cathartic reading this. This really is like a moment in time captured. It's like you're an archaeologist and you've dug up like a fossilised gammon. Oh, it's beautiful. Oh, where were we? I believe that the Leave voters made a very sensible decision, and even if it may take many years for Remainers to appreciate that, some, however, see it as they are already changing their tune. Dire prognostications of economic disaster are being turned into grudging admissions that we could do very well out of the EU. No one ever said that. Very few Remainers have really gone out and said that it would be good. Some have said, okay, we lost, go do Brexit, but I'm still not happy with it. But, you know, no Remainers has turned around and said that. So, let me describe to you why Leave won. As I see it, it may be of interest to Leave supporters who feel they did the right thing, but are disturbed by all the anger and hatred directed at them. Those anger and the hate are remarkably ignored by the mainstream media, while any hint of racism will get their full attention and be attributed to the Leave victory and voters. Yeah, bear in mind, at this time, there was a very, very large increase in racist incidents, and there still is now, of people using Brexit as an excuse to release their most racist instincts. And that's not going to go away after Brexit. In such an environment where the same forces that were determined to remain continue to resent the folly of our vote, it should be understood that what you have read is largely being driven by people with an agenda. Amidst the doom and gloom prognostications, the FTSE 100 within a week regained and surpassed the level of June 23rd. And yet, that was hundreds of thousands of pounds wiped out, while people who supported the Leave vote walked away with a mint betting against the pound. Where Remain were a shoo-in. The next day it rose to no it didn't, the highest level since August 2015. Countries are lining up to sign trade agreements with the UK. No, they're not. The EU are acknowledging that there should be no red lines on immigration and control of our borders. No one in the EU has said that. The EU have said that there are full laws to control immigration while being in the EU. Our government did none of those, even though governments in France, Germany, Belgium, Holland, Spain follow all these rules and are implemented. So once again, this is not the fault of the EU, it's the fault of our government, because Britain is addicted to migrant labour. Well, yeah. Oh yeah, and also to the trade agreements. Look at how many really significant trade agreements the EU has signed. The one with Japan equates to something like 8% of total GDP in the world. Yeah. And we're leaving that. And Japan has said, we're not interested in doing a trade agreement with you yet. So, across Europe there are 34 demands for referenda for other nations against the EU political system. None have happened. The first optimistic posts are appearing about our future. The EU is not going to fall because, as I've said many times on this channel, there is a difference between the UK Eurosceptics and the European Eurosceptics. This has to be the fastest recovery in history from a catastrophe. Perhaps it reflects the market's confidence, no it hasn't, that Brexit will be overruled, or that we will go cap in hand to the EU and have to beg for access to the free market, which looks like we're going to have to. As indeed our politicians are doing. Perhaps it is genuine confidence, as the news articles suggest. Yeah. There's no confidence about that, unless this guy permanently reads the Daily Express, which I think he might do. We won't know for real whether the markets are rediscovering their confidence in Britain until after Article 50 has been invoked and after we have left. Well, slowest UK growth ever. The only reason recently we've had any economic growth has been because companies have been stockpiling for Brexit. Nevertheless, for now, let us take the opportunity to understand what happened and why. So, is this short? I think it is. Yeah. So we'll go through his reflections, literally called Reflections. I have no intention of offering a blow-by-blow account of the history and the campaign. Many relevant items may be omitted, or in a sense they are by definition less relevant, or to me, perhaps to many Leave voters. This is rather a reflection of certain core issues and factors that led up to our unexpected victory. A victory unexpected by Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage. Oh, and by, if not many Leave voters, myself included. I can't continue with that voice. I'm sorry. Remainers will deride any sign that I am a Little Englander, harking back to history. But the US repeatedly harks back to its founding fathers and its principles, and to Britain, Agincourt and Camelot. Okay, I missed the part in history class where apparently Camelot was a part of British history. And the likes are no less elements that continue to fascinate, inspire and inform us. Why are you referencing Agincourt, by the way? Yes, it was a major British victory, but it led to nothing really significant. The England made no significant gains on Agincourt. You know, Henry's army was a defeated army going home, trying to get home. He went home after Agincourt. He did not do any much conquering after. Sorry. Indeed, in order to counter the threats and claims of the Remainers, it has been opposite to remind them of our history vis-a-vis the French and the Germans. Why are you reminding people that we were in conflict? Is that a good thing, to be in conflict with your closest neighbour? No. We had an amazing, in the EU, we had an amazing working partnership. That's why the EU has been so successful. A partnership working together of 28 nations working together. That's why it's been so good. And to say that enemies, you know, you're bringing up the, you know, how our opponents were like the French and the Germans. The fact that we are now in the EU able to work together with our supposed enemies is a good thing. And those enemies are now our allies. That is good. Freeing Europe against political dictators has been a fairly constant occupation for this nation. What? I'm sorry, but no. Likewise, the campaign running up to the vote so was clarifying for Remainers that the EU is not Europe. It is a political system set above Europe. No, it's not. The EU is Europe. It is part of Europe. What is this? What is this idea of everyone needs to be independent? Guess what? They all are independent nations. They've just all agreed to work together in certain areas. You know, Britain can't say that, you know, Germany now has to drive on the, right hand, on the left side of the road. They are not. We can't do that. But apparently, I think this is what this guy thinks it is. That somehow Angela Merkel says, "I want this law changed in Britain," and it somehow does happen. But no, it doesn't happen like that. It seems that European leaders are particularly audacious assiduous at deliberately conflating the two. Speaking always of Europe when referring to matters that are more properly issues about EU political system. Because they are trying to address the problems that all of Europe faces in the EU. So why not try and solve it at a European level, at an EU level, where we can work together to solve that problem, not individually. It continues. Given the bitterness of the campaign and the aftermath, we might perhaps be forgiven for indulging ourselves in a whimsical comparison equal to unexpected victories in our history, but there is indeed fitting parallels. The underdog outmatched in terms but not outfought. The people of Britain brought up to tales of World War II. We didn't stand alone in World War II. We fought with allies in World War II. Same in World War One. Napoleon, again, was a coalition. We would have lost at Waterloo if Blucher and the Prussians hadn't turned up. Elizabeth I had one major victory, but by no means was it a political victory. Spain was still pretty much a power for, quite a few decades after. Agincourt, again, we've already gone through that. King Arthur, I don't understand what King Arthur's got to do with Brexit. The Romans, the Romans are a bloody-minded race, if not substantially different, I would suggest, from any other. But in this instance, the bloody-mindedness served them well. So is this guy okay with one government, which apparently he's not okay? I'm not sure. This was at the heart of people saying no to unelected autocrats. That's wrong, they were elected. European Parliament's literally coming up next week. No to being told what to do. Yeah. Does he have a problem with the UK government telling him what to do? Is he a lawbreaker? I don't know. And no to being told that we can't decide our own future. No one was saying that. It's just that, hey, you can have a better future if we work together on this. But no. Remain characterised it as a victory for racism over immigration, which it was. And we will look at those issues, but really it was fought and won for the same reasons we fought and won 2 world wars. We do not like other people telling us what to do or threatening our freedom. The EU is not threatening freedom at all. That is ridiculous, but that's as far as I can go today. What I'm so glad I bought this years ago. I just can't believe it. But there you go. That's our first delve into this book. Oh.